The idea behind today's project is for me to create a router sled. This router sled will be used for me to take down a layer off of my tables that I create. I do have a thicknesser, however that thicknesser tends to only go up to 32 centimetres wide, and the current table I'm working on is about 44 centimetres wide, so not ideal for that. As you can see, I have two scrap bits of wood. I split the first bit of wood into two pieces. That would then be fixed onto my second piece of wood. You know what I mean. So one piece, split in half, fitted to the second piece. I mark that out and just ensure that there's a channel running down that is not wide enough that my router will fall into it, but also not too thin that there's not much movement. If I get any kickback or anything like that, I want the router to be able to move slightly and not sort of be stuck in there and break the sled itself. I did spend most of my time trying to find drill bits for this project. Now, as with drill bits, I leave them in the same place every time, but I always look everywhere else first, just to then look up at the shelf and find that they're exactly where I expect them to be. I then drilled some pilot holes. These pilot holes would insert the two walls and fix those on there. It's a pretty simple process. I do drill the pilot holes first just so it doesn't split that veneer, and it also gives me a guide. Once clamped on, I can literally drill down in there and fix those on. This first side is secured pretty easily, and just do the same with the second. Again, just making sure there's enough room for that sled to work around, inserting those screws in there. They're 40mm screws, so nice and tight. There was no need for me to add any glue to this project. As you can see, the router sled moves around nicely. Really happy with that. So what I do next is just mark where I'm going to be cutting out for the actual router bit to fit in. Again, I want to go just slightly over the width of the table so that when I'm moving there is clearance. Obviously the router can only move one way, so I need to be able to move that router back without it chipping out any of the board in the end there. Got some pilot holes. Those pilot holes will then be cut out with a jigsaw. Now for this, obviously I have very basic tools, but that kind of gives you a rough idea of how easy it is to make this. I drill some pilot holes and then I simply use a jigsaw to roughly cut up there. The bonus with this was my jigsaw actually ran along the line of the wall that I'd already screwed on, so it was a perfect cut. And once that piece was taken out, it left me with a lovely little rectangle. You can see I'm very happy with myself with that. What I wanted to do at the end was actually do a couple of semicircles, so there's a bit more runoff. When I'm using my router then, it wouldn't take any of the actual sled out or chip any of the sled away. Second one done. As you can see, pretty simple. That's the sled together. Now what I need to do is just a quick little sanding, and then I'll start to make a fix into the table itself, where my coffee tabletop can be fixed, and then we add blocks just to fix it in place, a couple of beams, and the sled should fit onto that pretty nicely. Again, just using scrap wood. The blocks were actually leftovers from the block table that I'm making from the pallets. The two beams there that I'm using were just from scrap wood. What I want to do once those are in place is just add a couple of little extra bits of wood to the end of the sled, and that will act as a runner for it to move across. Again, just drilling the pilot holes in there. There we go. Just screwing those end bits on there, and once these are screwed on, honestly, this thing is solid. I think for this I used, again that was 40mm screws I used for this. They hold it in place, just a multi-purpose screw. I do use a router bit just so that screws sit flush in there. That's the ideal way of doing that, I think. As you can see, that fits on there nicely. I am very impressed with my handiwork. A basic router sled created. Very impressed with myself. A basic router sled created from scrap wood. At this point I find myself that I'm so strong that I managed to snap my drill bit. If any of you have done that, you probably know how frustrating it is. But luckily I've got spares. So I fix those blocks down. Once those blocks are in place, it's just a case of fitting the outer beams in place as well. For the outer beams, I use 60mm screws because it's obviously a bit thicker than the table. You obviously want your beams on the side there to be slightly higher than the table, otherwise you could risk eating into your beams. And that's it, those are fixed in with the 60mm screws. That's one side done, and then it's just the second side to go. And that's how you make a router sled out of scrap wood. Simple. God, this guy's slow, isn't he? Come on, hurry up, Steve. Get those screws in me. And that's it. As you can see, the router fits in there nicely. Got a nice movement up and down. Moves across smoothly. Again, as I said, the veneer itself helped massively. I didn't need any sort of grease or anything like that to move the sled along because it's veneered. It moves along really easily. I sanded those bits on the outside down slightly so it moves along. And that's how you do it. Router sled from scrap wood.